Welcome back to the Real Texas Radio Podcast, or if this is your first time tuning in, welcome, 1,000 welcomes to the Real Texas Radio Podcast. I am your host, Bronin. I've got a big show planned today. Per usual, I am going to be talking about which Texas city is suffering a water crisis, allegedly, not like the fake housing crisis that we have here in Dallas. I'm also going to be talking about, has anything gotten cheaper in America in the last few years? We hear all about what has gotten more expensive, but I've come up with a list of items that are refreshingly much more affordable. And I'm also going to kick us off. I want to talk about a weird ethics advisory commission meeting that occurred in Dallas earlier this week. And let's go ahead and get into it. But first, if you haven't already, please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow the Real Texas Radio Podcast from wherever you stream. And please follow the show on X at RTR_Bronin, RTR_Bronin. All right, now, you're listening to the Real Texas Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Bronin. Just a fed-up taxpayer, bringing you all of your Texas, local, and national news. You know, as much as I complain about Dallas and homelessness, which obviously every city has homelessness, right? And some other cities, some other states, they have it much worse than does Dallas. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything about it. But whenever I have visitors who come and visit and stay with me here in Dallas, you know, they always love it. That has been true since I moved here. And, you know, I'm originally from Boston. My family, they're all from Ireland. Most of them, if they don't live in Ireland, most of them live in the Boston area, Boston proper, surrounding New Hampshire. And my parents, they actually just visited over Easter weekend. My father was helping me with a lot of work that needed to get done actually around the house. And so it was a kind of a working vacation, but the weather was terrible in New England around Easter. They, on the way to the airport, were freezing. They just said it was so nasty, the wind, and then they landed in Dallas. And the weather was great that weekend. I think it rained Saturday night, but pretty much overnight, and it was a little drizzly in the morning, and then it was nice again. And my parents had a great time. My father's been here many times over the years, always has a good time. My mother hadn't been in a long time. She really enjoyed herself. But was it, I don't know if it was, might have been, was it Easter Sunday? Maybe it was Saturday. But we were downtown, we had brunch, and then my father and I, we went for a walk. I wanted to show him City Hall and ask him what he thought. Is there $1 billion worth of work with that building, would you say? Or I know that some of the cost is associated with the relocating for 5 years and paying rent elsewhere, but in any case, he thought it was a bunch of BS, like most of us think it's a bunch of BS. Irrespective of whether you think the building should come down and the whole area should be redeveloped, both things can be true, that the numbers they've come up with are a bunch of BS to repair, rehab, whatever term you want to use, and you still may be in the camp that it should be knocked down anyway, even if the price to repair was a lot more reasonable within the stratosphere. In any case, we had a good walk around, and then we went behind City Hall heading toward the Cedars. We actually walked over to Old City Park because I wanted to show my father that. I thought he would get a kick out of it. It's a great park. And yeah, so we had a lovely walk. We, you know, of course, we passed all of the homeless who were littering the sidewalk and didn't encounter any violence. That was great. But obviously the I-30 Canyon project is going to be underway for the next few years. But it was so loud. I've never walked over there. Maybe once I've walked from, maybe once I had to for an event, but I've never in the daytime just walked really behind City Hall, walked from downtown Dallas over to Old City Park. And it was illuminating to see it, to just really to take it all in. And it's so loud with the traffic, with the I-30 traffic below. And talk about an eyesore, and talk about an area that needs a lot of love and attention. And you know what? I would say that if you were going to develop anywhere in Dallas, that's probably one of the most urgent areas that could really benefit the whole city. Now, I don't know. I'm not convinced that means that Dallas City Hall needs to be demolished in order to accomplish that. But I would love to see decking over there. I would love to see decking, and I just think it would be a tremendous benefit. And I think you could actually get a lot of the city council, the literally the Mason-Dixon line, I-30, bridging the divide. Obviously, billions of dollars. I think the funding would have to come from the state or the feds or somebody. Hopefully not a bond, but maybe a bond. I'd be a lot more supportive of that than the $6.2 billion bond that DISD has on the ballot next month, which I'm going to be voting down 100%, and I would encourage you to do the same. But I don't want to spend too much more time on the topic. But anyway, my parents, as I mentioned, they really enjoyed themselves. Hey, that's why I still live here. I live here by choice. I don't have any relatives at all in the South. It's me and my husband now, who also moved here for me. And he enjoys it too. He enjoys the weather, the very short winter, the pool season. We don't complain about the heat ever, because I will take 100 degrees every day over 3 months of winter. Yes, I will. Or New England, 6 months of winter. And you know what? I ran into somebody recently who's also a transplant from the West Coast. And he's lived in Dallas a little bit longer than I have. But you know what? He said he was actually, I would pick this city, Dallas, over anywhere. And this is somebody who says he really has a lot of choices in terms of where he could live. And he was like, this was his take on Dallas. We're not an A+ in anything. We are not the best at anything in Dallas. But in every single category, we are a B+. And okay, maybe not nature. Obviously, we don't have mountains, or, we've got White Rock Lake. We've got nice parks, but we don't have mountains. We don't have a beach. We do, but our parks are quite decent. I will definitely give us that. In any case, he said, and for these reasons, I'm a Dallas evangelist. There's basically, from his perspective, no traffic. I think a lot of people who live in Dallas, DFW, would strongly disagree with that. But, I think we can probably all name many cities that have much worse traffic than Dallas. LA, I would say, traffic in Boston is terrible. If you are trying to traverse 3 or 4 miles in Boston on 2-lane streets, lights at every intersection, good luck. It doesn't even matter what time of the day. If you were trying to go cross town in Boston, forget about it. Maybe early on a Sunday morning. But 5 Dallas miles, especially on the highway, even in a little bit of traffic, completely different ball game. And my parents and I took them out to Fort Worth to the Stockyards. I've never been to the Stockyards at night before. I've been many times to the Stockyards. We went to Billy Bob's. What a fantastic night. And they really have law and order over there. There, you don't see any of the nonsense that you might see on 6th Street in Austin, for example, out in Fort Worth. It's very orderly, and you see all different age groups, and all different socioeconomic status, and it's really nice. It's a great nightlife scene, I think, out there in Fort Worth. I'll have to go back again. A lot of appeal there. And, again, I was a designated driver. It was no bother at all getting to or from. It was very easy to travel that. How many miles is it? 35, 40 miles between Dallas and Fort Worth, something like that. All right, I'm going to just move right along. I'm not going to talk too much about City Hall. There aren't really any updates. I guess we're kind of in a holding pattern as the public, not as the wheelers and dealers behind the scenes. But I guess we'll find out next month what's going to happen. The Mavs, if they haven't already, they're expected to submit a proposal in response to the city manager's survey that is now open to anybody. You can propose how the central business district of downtown Dallas should be redeveloped or reimagined. And we really want to hear from you, the public. And we didn't just put out the survey because of criticism that the whole process has been botched and not transparent whatsoever. So we'll see what happens. We're all just kind of waiting and watching. But there are a few other items that I want to talk about. One, the Office of the Inspector General. Now, they're supposed to publish a quarterly report. As I record on April 16th, the Q1 2026 report is not released. Now, that might be fine. Maybe they'll, I don't know. I think they can set their own guidelines. They used to publish a monthly report, then they went to a quarterly. That's fine. The only reason I went looking for it is because when I pulled the Q4 2025 report, because I did an episode a few months back on the Office of the Inspector General, all of the problems with the office, that report was published before the end of the quarter. So I guess, I don't know, they didn't plan on doing any work for most of December or the second half of December. So that's why I figured maybe by the first week of April, the Q1 report would be out. That is not so. And so I went on, I was just kind of looking at some of the past meetings because obviously I don't have a whole lot of hobbies. I was looking for committee meetings or just interesting items, looking at agendas. And I just popped open the video, the live feed on DallasCityNews.net. This was a couple of days ago, and the Ethics Advisory Commission is meeting. And most people don't pay attention to this, but there happened to be one person, it appeared, just from the limited view of the audience that you can see in the council chamber where the meeting was being held. There happened to be one individual seated, and he was invited down to the platform where presenters typically sit, and basically just got a personal audience with the Ethics Advisory Commission. And this person, an ex-Dallas City Councilor, Philip Kingston, he's also a lawyer, lobbyist, brags about being very connected to the current city councilors, being a man of influence in the city of Dallas development. And I just never seen anything like this. An unelected lawyer lobbyist invited down to provide comments on specifically 12A, the section of the Dallas City Code, which he described as useless, pointless, which essentially governs reporting in terms of reporting misconduct or ethics violations or, lobbyist reporting. And we know that there's already such little monitoring going on at all. And let me just go ahead and play the cut from Kingston here.
Perkins, all I want to say is each one of these recommendations I have made has come from an experience that I have had because I am probably the most experienced lawyer practicing in 12A. in the city. And I'm this body needs to do its work and get its work to the EAC. And so if you want to hear from me, please do ask questions. But I understand, Robert.
I'll just end it right there. There are a few other cuts. He actually referred to the redlining that he did. I don't know, he printed out this 12A and just redlined it with what he thinks that it should be instead. I'm the most experienced. I'm the greatest. I'm the best. I'm smarter than you. I'm better than you. And so, you should just incorporate all of the notes, what I think the code should be instead.
And I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but it's true. I've been right about everything.
That may work for some politicians. Very few, and in fact, maybe Trump only seems to be the only person who's gotten away with that kind of an attitude. But this guy, he is definitely not Trump at all. And every one of his suggestions, every one of his red line comments was voted on and shut down by the body. They weren't having any of it. One of the recommendations that he suggested was eliminating anonymous reporting, and controversial, admittedly, and some other people that I saw expressing opinions about this. Should you be allowed to anonymously complain to the OIG's office? Like, for example, if you saw somebody stealing money out of a city cash register, would you be able to report that if you didn't want to share your name? Would that be worthwhile? I mean, if you saw a criminal act occurring, and if you are employed by the city and you do see an ethics violation or something illegal going on, you are required to report to the OIG. You are a mandated reporter. And maybe you don't want to get tangled up in any mess, but you just wanted to report you saw wrongdoing, somebody should look into it. You certainly can provide your contact information if you want to cooperate further or provide more information. I don't really know about it. I've talked about it before. The OIG, all of the reports they get, it just looks like a bunch of snitching for the most part, but occasionally something serious, something legitimate does come through the snitch line, basically. And I'm not sure if it's anonymous or not. I'm going to give you an example. What has just been uncovered? Somebody reported to the OIG in Dallas that there were at least 2 people employed by the city of Dallas in some capacity in the IT department. They were simultaneously employed, and these were higher level staff in the IT department in Austin, Texas. Austin fired these people. They did not disclose that they had 2 jobs, which in an IT position, when you're dealing with sensitive information, that is something that you must do. A third, I think, had an LLC that he didn't disclose. And so now the Office of the Inspector General here in Dallas is apparently further investigating that. I'm not sure what's going to happen, if any criminal charges will be brought of that. But just wanted to bring that to your attention. I'm not going to spend much time on that. What I do want to talk about is in Corpus Christi, so way down in South Texas. You may have seen there's been a ton of reports of water shortages and water crises, very different from the fake housing shortage and the fake housing crisis that a lot of Dallas politicians like to pretend is the case here, which it is not. But all around Texas, much of Texas is very data center friendly. You may have read about this. Data centers, AI, warehouses, they're popping up all over the place. And they require, and I don't even know why myself, but they require a lot of water. And Corpus Christi, what has opened there recently, an Exxon Plastics plant that has opened within the last decade in Corpus Christi, which uses 25 million gallons of fresh water a day as of 2022. So that was 4 years ago. So maybe they're using more than that. They've got some other industry there as well. Steel Dynamics, a rolled steel factory. They've got oil refining going on, obviously, in Corpus Christi. That rely and these companies rely on the fresh water. And so now Corpus Christi is in trouble. Is Corpus Christi going to run out of water? I don't think so. Do you think we're going to let that happen? You think that we're really going to let that happen? I don't think so. Necessity is the mother of all invention, and we do have a track record of letting things run down to the wire here in the U.S., around the world, but definitely in the U.S. This is another example of it. They'll let the crisis get about as bad as it can get without the water running out. So I'm not too worried about that. But one of the suggestions floated is a desalination plant. And desalination, it's more common and it's in use in the Middle East. I'm not sure which countries. I think a lot of them, Saudi Arabia, Israel, for example, they use desalination. And I actually wasn't sure when I started doing some research for this topic if desalination occurs in the U.S. And what do you think? Is there desalination plants in the country? Do you know the answer to this? The answer is actually yes, there are. And in fact, very similar in use to exactly what Corpus Christi needs. Do you know how many water desalination plants are operating in the United States right now in multiple states, including California, including Texas, including Florida, other states as well? 325, approximately 325 water desalination plants in Democrat-controlled and Republican-controlled states. El Paso uses desalination. And you know what the problem is? So Corpus Christi, they actually wanted to get desalination underway years ago. But Joe Biden, thank you, Joe Biden, and his EPA regulations, they blocked the permit because where the water would be dumped, the environmentalists claim that it would interfere or it would interrupt the life cycle of the natural species. It would change the composition of the water. Well, you know what? Again, I can tell you that if it comes down allegedly to these species that might be jeopardized if this desalinated water is dumped into where they live, I guarantee you, if it comes down to the species or the humans, who do you think is going to be prioritized when it comes right down to it? It's going to be the humans. So, this desalination, the more I read about it, the more interesting it seems. I think the problem is the environmentalists, they want once the water is desalinated in Corpus Christi, they want it to be moved further inland. And I think that is where it gets expensive, like transporting the water, moving it. Presumably you're going to have to use, I don't even know, trucks, or you're going to have to use some kind of oil and gas fueled machine to move the water further inland for it then to flow down. And it's complicated, but I did a lot of digging into this story a couple of weeks ago, and as I mentioned, I've had some visitors. I've been kind of busy, so I was just taking notes. And I've never been to Corpus Christi. I'd love to go and visit. I'd love to see it. And I have a feeling I'll be able to get fresh water if I go and stay in a hotel in Corpus Christi. I think they're going to have it all figured out. But in any case, just wanted to give you an update there. All right, I'm going to wrap it up soon. I'm not going to spend much time talking about this. I just wanted to mention it, though. But you may have seen headlines coming out of Ken Paxton's office Ken Paxton, of course, he's still duking it out for the GOP nomination for the U.S. Senate. That race is going to be coming up next month, the runoff. But he just announced a settlement and framed it as a win against Live Nation, the concert and music ticket seller, which owns Ticketmaster. And apparently there was a lawsuit. It was filed in 2024, and Texas joined, I think, 39 other states. And they were challenging Live Nation as a monopoly, which it is, clearly. And I think it merged with Ticketmaster back in 2010. And I wasn't paying attention back in 2010 very much, but and obviously that was a Democrat-controlled Barack Obama's DOJ that allowed that to go through. Not sure why they thought that was going to be a good idea for working class people. But the real issue is, remember Democrats, they used to be screaming about junk fees, junk concert fees. You go to buy a concert ticket, say it's $70. You click on the $70 ticket, and then you get to the checkout cart on the phone or on the internet, and next thing you know, it's $100 or $120 for the $70 ticket in junk crap fees. So that's really what it was about. And in any case, Live Nation said they were going to fight and appeal, kicking and screaming all the way to the Supreme Court. And I'm not sure why these 40 states just didn't go for that. And instead, I'm reading from the Dallas Observer here. They reached a settlement. The settlement, vaguely described by Live Nation, details alterations to the ticketing processes. The company has set aside $280 million, which is, sounds like a lot of money, right? Sounds like a figure that all those pharmaceutical companies selling opioids that turned a ton of patients into junkies or worse, homeless junkies. They had to pay out all of those hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, and then the homeless population, the drug-using population dramatically decreased, right? Isn't that how that worked? The problem solved, right? Yeah, I don't think so. So Live Nation, they put aside $280 million for potential damages. And they have $25 billion in annual revenue. So in other words, Live Nation, they put aside a whopping 1% of 1 year's annual revenue. So what does that mean? I can be expecting maybe a check for 70 cents, or I can be expecting an email where I can have the opportunity to fill out some forms to get a 70-cent credit toward my next concert ticket that's still going to be full of junk fees. Is that how that is going to work? I'm not sure. And I'm not bitter, though. I say this. I'm actually looking at going to a couple of concerts maybe this weekend, and I've been watching the prices very closely. And I'm usually a day of purchaser of concert tickets, or the day before. And I usually stick to that strategy. I find it's pretty good for finding a deal, even with the junk fees. So, a segment, I'm going to end on this. I was talking to my husband. I was just thinking about what has gotten cheaper in the last couple of years or so. All we hear about is the gas prices, the milk and the eggs, the gas, the price of housing, which of course is falling, but not the interest rate. So you may not realize, but insurance through the roof. Has anything gotten cheaper? I actually started making a list. And you know what I'm going to tell you? What started my list? Oddly enough, air conditioner filters. I have some property. I say that I'm not trying to brag. Believe me, it's not glamorous property at all. But a couple of older apartments, and they have a odd sized vent where I need the filter. So I can't just go to Kroger or even Home Depot and get the filter I need. I pretty much always have to buy them online. And I mean, they could easily be $20 a filter, I want to say. And I went on to replenish my stock and I try to get a few at a time. And I found them, I think I bought a 6 pack for $27. Obviously not the premium. You know, some of the filters claim that, you know, that this one will free your air of 300 different allergens and dusts, and this one will free your air of 500 for 3 months, and this one won't do anything. Okay, well, I went for the discounted filters, but 6 for $27. I've never seen that deal. So that's one thing that's dropped in price, thank God. You know what else? Home internet. That used to be such a cartel. You had a couple of options, maybe. So sometimes I do have some property where there is just one option, which sucks. And now there are all these different companies, T-Mobile, Mint. I've seen one for Sonic. They're all offering Wi-Fi, and you don't need the phone jack anymore. Thank God. The setup couldn't be easier. I'm paying about $30 per month in a couple of units for Wi-Fi, and guess what? The Wi-Fi, it's way better. I assume it's 5G. When I first got 5G a few years ago, it was okay. It's much better now for $30 a month. Verizon, they offer a plan too. So I'm not getting paid by anybody, I promise you. I'm just telling you. If you haven't checked your Wi-Fi plan in a while, you have AT&T or Spectrum and you're paying up north of $75, I would strongly encourage you to take a look at your options. Same thing with cell phone plans. You know, a lot of people, they like to have the unlimited cell phone plan. I haven't had an unlimited cell phone plan in maybe a decade, and I don't think I've ever run out of data. And you know what? A few years ago, I switched. I got a plan for $20 a month. They must have sold my data to every single broker in the world. The spam calls, the spam texts went through the roof. But $20 a month, and I just switched again pretty recently to. I'm paying $180 for a year with Mint. $180 for the year. So I have no cell phone bill again until like February or March of next year. It's great. And the service is great. It runs on the T-Mobile network. Something else kind of random, electric toothbrushes. I think you can get an electric toothbrush for $10 now. They used to be very expensive. If you don't use an electric toothbrush, that's one of the few things from the dentist that I listen to. Usually they're trying to hose you for a bunch of, upcharge you for all kinds of crap that you don't need. But the electric toothbrush, I've heard that from dentists in multiple countries. They recommend that you use that. So for $10, and the replacements are pretty cheap as well. The replacement heads, you can buy those in bulk. And you know what else? I'm not a fashionista. If you've ever seen me post a photo on social media, you know that. And I haven't even gotten a haircut by somebody. I haven't paid to get a haircut in about 6 years. I stopped during COVID, not because I was afraid, but one, because they made it illegal with the hoax, COVID, farce, nonsense, scam. And then, you know what I said? Maybe they done me a favor. So I cut that cost out of my life completely. And the clothing. I mean, forget about thrift stores, although that's, of course, an option. But, you know, I go to Marshall's a couple of times a year. And, I mean, shirts, T-shirts, sweatpants. I mean, you can buy a garment pretty easily for under $10. A new, decent garment. I don't know, unless you're really concerned about threads and fabrics and quality and all that. I'm not. I don't know. I have a lot of clothes that I bought 10 years ago from fast fashion stores. People talk about how they disintegrate. I don't know what people do to clothes. I'm not running my clothes through the ringer. You know, throw them in the washing machine occasionally, but that's about it. And anything else that you can think of that has gotten cheaper over the years? Oh, Teslas. I put that on my list. EVs. They used to be definitely north of $50,000. Now, I mean, the gasoline fueled vehicles, the conventional vehicles, out of control because everybody is buying the SUV or the pickup truck. Out of control prices plus the insurance. Meanwhile, Teslas, I mean, you can enter the Tesla market at like 35,000, and the charging at home, it's negligible on the bill. You won't have maintenance for the first several years, rotating the tires, that's about it. And I mean, great car, by the way. And forget about the global warming crap. That's not why I recommend an EV. It's just if you have the home charger, I think you have to have that to make it work. I think everybody who's got an EV would back me up on that. But other manufacturers, I think Kia, I think they're making very decent EVs now. That Ford Mustang, that Mac, that's a very good looking car. I've seen it well reviewed. I see a lot of them around. That's probably not that cheap, but nice looking car. So, that's another thing that's come down in price. And what's the average that people spend on gas per year? It varies widely. How much does it cost to fill a pickup truck? I assume they have at least a 20-gallon tank, maybe 30. So if you have a 30-gallon tank, anyway, it's over $300 a month now. $300 a month if you were going to fill it up every month. Probably more than that. Filling it thousands anyway. Quickly could add up to the thousands. Whereas the Tesla, I don't even know if it would rack up a few $100 a year in charging. We're very conservative with the electricity. Okay, time to wrap it up here. Thank you for listening to the Real Texas Radio podcast today. Once again, I'm Bronin. If you haven't already, please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow the Real Texas Radio podcast from wherever you stream. Follow the show on X at RTR_Bronin, RTR_Bronin. Tell me what I haven't thought of that's gotten cheaper in the last few years, if anything, on X. I'll catch you next time.